Hi, welcome to the Creative Grove. My name is Ingrid Blackburn, and today I'm going to teach you how to create this vintage antique look using Ranger's Distress inks and a little bit of blending. So why don't we go ahead and get started.
Now I have just a piece of scrap paper, and this piece measures not quite 3 3/4 by 4 7/8. So, you know, it's kind of a large piece of paper, but it's just something I'd left over. You can see the edge is even just a little bent, which is fine because we're going to end up cropping those off. And we're going to do a little bit of distress blending, and then we're going to add some embellishments and a greeting to make a really fun little tag for somebody's gift for this Christmas. So let's get started. So I have antique linen and old paper here and a couple of the mini distress blending tools. We're going to start off with the old paper, and I really want to have a nice fine blend. So I'll get that inked up pretty well, and I'm not going to worry about, you know, where it's going to be on the paper. I just want to make sure that it gets a good coverage here. And you can see that sometimes by putting this on, you get those funky marks, but don't worry about those because they'll blend out as we go along. It's probably one of the biggest things that people get worried about when they blend distress inks, because they're like, oh my God, that looks awful. But actually at the end of the day, you know, everything does kind of come together. So we'll just kind of get a good coating here. And then I'm actually going to kind of move on to antique linen. I'm not going to worry about getting that totally blended yet, because I want to see which color is going to be my dominant color. I just wanted to kind of have a variation of color here, and that's kind of the whole purpose of distress inks. They work so well together. So you can see here we kind of have a little bit of a mess, but you can see they're starting to blend, and some of those harsh marks are starting to even out. And I'm trying to just create a nice neutral background. You can see this is a really neutral background, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring in some scattered straw as well. And this is a really nice, kind of muted but light yellow also, and this will hopefully give it a little bit of brightness. Oh, there we go. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I wanted the neutral background, but I wanted it to be kind of warm. And so this is the missing link here. And this is what I'm talking about, distress inks. You can see that together, they make a beautiful, beautiful combination. And it's really starting to come together here. You can see that all those marks have kind of disappeared, and that's kind of the nice thing about distress, is it blends and you can continue working it. It's a constant evolution. Once you do something, it's not set that way, and that's kind of the way most dye inks are, but not distress. Distress, the formula that they have just continues to work, and it's a workable ink. And that has its advantages and its disadvantages. But here you can see I'm really loving this background. We've got that nice warm feel to it, but yet it's quite neutral at the same time. Kind of like that old antique look to it. Okay, so now that we have that, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to work in just a little tiny bit more antique linen, just to give it a little bit of a neutralish tone as well, now that I have all that scattered straw on there. And now that we have that, I think what I'd like to do is actually create our corners so that I can continue this border on those borders. I want it to look very even. I didn't do that initially just because I wasn't 100% certain what direction this was going. So to create a perfect tag corner, I'm just going to basically cut one, and probably a larger scissor would have worked better there. And so that I have even corners, I'm just going to flip that upside down to the other side and kind of use that as a guide to trim. And that way I have perfect corners. So now I'm going to go ahead and continue sponging, and then we'll move on. I'm going to go around the edges a little bit deeper, leaving the middle a little bit more in the light. And take a little bit more scattered straw, because I really wanted to get the same color depth right here. So there we go. And then I think what we'll do is we'll even take this another step, and we'll add a little bit of brown around the edge. So I have several shades of brown here. I have Ground Espresso, Vintage Photo, and Walnut Stain. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a warm shade, the Vintage Photo. And I'm just going to add, I wasn't really sure which direction I was going to go in, but I think I'm going to add just a little bit of the Vintage Photo on the edge, just to kind of, you see how that really warms that up? It really kind of gives it that antique look. And it didn't really turn it brown, it just kind of worked with the base that it already had going on. And I'm going to do a little heavier on the corners. And notice that when I'm doing this, I'm keeping the bulk of my tool off my project and not so much on my project. Because I don't want to overpower everything that I've already done. I'm just kind of looking to add a little to this. So there we go. I'm going to clean up my work surface and move on. So I've given this an opportunity to dry. I actually took a heat tool to it, and it's also been sitting out while I put together some snowflakes. I ran this die through the Big Shot, and this is a Snow Flurry Big Z die by Sizzix. This was designed for Stampin' Up, but I'm sure you can find one similar to it, or any framelit as well. Little steel dies would work perfectly. And I created some bigger snowflakes here. So I've got a large snowflake and kind of a small one, which will just kind of go on here. I really kind of love that blue and brown look together, and this to me is very neutral brown tone. So that's kind of the look that I was going for today. I used a little bit of glitter paper here to create that one, and I have a large rhinestone there. And we'll use a couple more rhinestones or sequins, as you see I've already got at the ready here for afterward. So right now I want to put my greeting on, and because I have these large kind of embellishments to add to my tag, I have this great Christmas set, and this is, well actually it's not a Christmas set, it's an Everyday Sentiment set, that's the name of it, and by Happy Little Stampers. This is a new stamp set, and so I'm using the Merry Christmas. I love that you can kind of piece things together. Anytime that you have versatility in stamp sets, I'm all for that. So we're going to kind of position that here, and then we'll place our snowflakes down around it. I'm going to first test my paper to make sure that I dried it thoroughly. So I'm going to run some embossing powder on it here, and then I'm just going to kind of dip it into my embossing powder. And this is espresso embossing powder, and it ran off, so that's perfect. If it's stuck to it, then it's not ready to be embossed. So we're going to go ahead and get that on there, and that's just a de-static tool. That one happens to be by Stampin' Up, the embossing buddy. And I need some Versamark ink here, and Versamark is just a clear pigment ink, kind of like a watermark ink. So if I were to stamp anything with Versamark, like let's say I have a blue cardstock, I just have a darker image, a watermark, which is actually not going to be very dark. It's going to be a darker image than my cardstock, but it's still going to be light. So that's great for backgrounds. You can't go wrong with a Versamark pad. I'm just going to pop this down into the corner here, kind of offsetting it, not keeping it in the center. You know, things don't have to be perfectly centered all the time. Sometimes if they're off-centered, it's actually nicer. And we'll lift that up, and we'll just kind of dip this into our embossing powder. Perfect. Look at that nice bold fonts, which is what you want for something that's this big. You want it to stand out. You can't have something that's tiny. It'll kind of get lost. So we're going to go ahead and heat set this, and I'll be back in a second. Now, since this is a tag, it's going to get a lot of, 3D use. So we want to make sure that these aren't going anywhere. And to do so, I'm going to actually use some mini glue dots, And I'm going to place several on the center here, and it's always easier to pick them up if you take whatever you're using in your hands. And we'll just get several of these on here so that this really doesn't go anywhere, because it will. Being on a package or a wine bottle, whatever it is that you're going to use it for. And I kind of want this to go across here. So kind of coming off a little. I want to steer clear of the circle because I'm going to add, and see, this way I can also kind of make these come up a little if I want, giving a little bit more of a 3D look, which is kind of fun. And we're going to do the same thing with the small one. We'll just add 3 here to the back. I like using mini glue dots because things really aren't going to go anywhere with those. They're kind of staying put. And we'll have this one go in kind of the opposite direction, a little off the edge, which is fine. So now that we have that there, I had tried putting on some sequins and some rhinestones. I ended up putting on a bunch of rhinestones and actually taking them all off. I really didn't care for the look. And I also have some 5/8 inch grosgrain ribbon, and this is chocolate chip, and this was by Stampin' Up. And we're just gonna, punched a 1/4 inch hole right there. You always want to come from the back to the front when doing this kind of a loop with your ribbons. Then we'll take the tails and we'll bring them through this little loop here. And then just kind of tighten it up. And you want to be careful because you don't want to tear your paper here because it is rather thin. You could always mat it onto a thicker piece if you want ahead of time. You know, I'm not going to worry about that, and it's white on the back, so I can very easily write who this is from and to who it's going. And there you go. Nice, fun little tag. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a little something and in creating that nice background, neutral background with Distress Inks. And just a fun little tag for Christmas. This is the first Christmas project on YouTube for, no, it's not. And a fun little project for Christmas. Thanks so much for joining me. Blah, blah, blah. So I hope you enjoyed that. This was really a lot of fun. I enjoyed creating that fun distress background. I hope you learned a little something. And I look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Bye-bye. Blah, blah, blah. So thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed making that distress background with me. You can see that it turned out flawless. There really are no little marks or anything, and that's the beauty of Distress Ink. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and be sure to check out other videos in the collection. And if you want to see more, be sure to sign up for my newsletter on my blog. You can just click the link right here, and that will take you to the blog, and sign up for a free video series, which has a lot of videos that you will not find here on YouTube. So thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.